They looked like ordinary people, neighbors, workers, even friends, but behind those familiar faces lived unimaginable darkness. Some were predators who lured with charm, others shadows who struck without warning. There were cult leaders who commanded death, and killers who taunted police with codes. Their crimes were so brutal that they scarred generations. Quiet homes became houses of horror, city streets turned into hunting grounds, and trust itself was shattered. These are not just murders, they are stories of cruelty and evil hiding behind human faces. For decades, investigators hunted them, communities feared them, and the world still asks why. Tonight, we step into the chilling history of 8 of America's most infamous figures, crimes that remain unforgettable, and shadows that still haunt us today. 1. Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy was one of America's most charming yet terrifying killers. Born in 1946 in Vermont, he grew up believing his grandparents were his parents and his mother was his sister, a family secret that deeply affected him. Despite this, Bundy appeared intelligent, well-spoken, and ambitious. On the outside, he looked like a promising law student, but inside he carried dark obsessions. Bundy developed a method of pretending to be injured, using a fake cast or crutches to trick women into helping him. Once they were close, he would overpower them, abducting and murdering them. Between 1974 and 1978, Bundy is confirmed to have killed at least 30 young women across several states, though investigators believe the true number could be far higher. His crimes were marked by both brutality and calculation. He revisited crime scenes, sometimes keeping his victims' bodies for days. Bundy's intelligence also allowed him to escape custody twice, once jumping from a courthouse window and later breaking out of jail, which left authorities humiliated. During his trial, Bundy represented himself, using his charm to manipulate the courtroom and gain attention, but the evidence was overwhelming. In 1989, after years of appeals, he was executed in the electric chair. Even decades later, Bundy's story remains a haunting reminder that evil can hide behind confidence, charm, and the most innocent smile. 2. Jeffrey Dahmer. Jeffrey Dahmer, known as the Milwaukee Cannibal, committed crimes so disturbing they shocked the world. Born in 1960, Dahmer showed an early fascination with death, collecting animal bones and dissecting roadkill. His murders began in 1978, but most took place between 1987 and 1991. In total, Dahmer killed 17 men and boys, usually luring them to his apartment with promises of money or companionship. What horrified people most was not only the killings, but what followed. Dahmer dismembered his victims, kept body parts as trophies, and even stored human remains in his refrigerator. He performed disturbing experiments, trying to create zombies by drilling into victims' skulls. His apartment, when discovered in 1991, was described as a house of horrors, filled with skulls, bones, and photographs of his crimes. In one tragic incident, police even returned a 14-year-old boy to Dahmer after believing it was a domestic issue. He was killed shortly after. Dahmer was finally caught in 1991 when a woman escaped and led police to him. Sentenced to life in prison, he was killed by another inmate in 1994. His story remains one of the darkest in modern crime history. 3. Jack the Ripper. Jack the Ripper is one of history's most chilling unsolved mysteries. In 1888, London's Whitechapel district was gripped by terror as at least 5 women, most of them sex workers, were brutally murdered. Their bodies were not only killed but mutilated in ways that showed unusual precision and cruelty. What made the case unforgettable was that the killer was never identified. Despite countless investigations and hundreds of suspects, his true identity remains a mystery. Some believed he was a doctor or surgeon, given the surgical skills shown in the killings, while others thought he was simply a violent local man who knew the streets well. The murders spread panic across London, and newspapers around the world fueled the fear by calling him a monster in the fog. The letters signed by Jack the Ripper, whether genuine or hoaxes, only deepened the legend. More than 130 years later, Jack the Ripper remains one of the most infamous figures in true crime. His crimes not only terrified a city, but also inspired books, films, and endless speculation, proving that sometimes the most haunting killers are the ones who are never caught. 4. John Wayne Gacy. John Wayne Gacy seemed like the perfect neighbor. Born in 1942, he was a successful contractor, active in his community, and even entertained children at parties dressed as Pogo the Clown. To those who knew him, he appeared generous and friendly, but beneath this mask of kindness hid one of America's most terrifying killers. Between 1972 and 1978, Gacy murdered at least 33 young men and boys. He often lured his victims with promises of work, money, or simply friendship. Once inside his home, he tricked them into handcuffs during what he called a magic trick, and then attacked, tortured, and strangled them. The true horror was discovered in his house. Police found 29 bodies buried in the crawl space under his home, with others discarded in nearby rivers. The scale of his crimes shocked the nation. How could a cheerful neighbor in clown makeup hide such unimaginable evil? Gacy was arrested in 1978 after one victim escaped and reported him. He was convicted of murder and sentenced to death. In 1994, he was executed by lethal injection. His story remains a chilling reminder that monsters don't always look frightening. They can wear a smile and even a clown's painted face. 5. Charles Manson. Charles Manson was not a typical killer. He was a cult leader whose influence turned others into murderers. Born in 1934, Manson spent much of his early life in crime and prison. In the late 1960s, he formed a group known as the Manson family, convincing followers that he was a prophet. Manson believed in a coming race war, which he called Helter Skelter. To start this chaos, he ordered his followers to commit brutal murders. In 1969, actress Sharon Tate, who was 8 months pregnant, and 4 others were killed in her Los Angeles home. Although Manson himself did not physically kill the victims, his control over his followers was so strong that he was convicted of masterminding the crimes. He spent the rest of his life in prison, where he remained a symbol of manipulation, cult danger, and evil charisma until his death in 2017. 6. Richard Ramirez. Richard Ramirez, known as the Night Stalker, spread fear across California during the mid-1980s. Born in 1960, Ramirez grew up in a troubled environment, surrounded by violence and drugs. By 1984, he began a crime spree that combined burglary, assault, and murder. Ramirez broke into homes at night, attacking men, women, and even children. His crimes were unpredictable and brutal. He used guns, knives, and even blunt objects. What made him even more terrifying was his connection to Satanism. At crime scenes, he often left symbols and spoke of worshiping the devil, making the public see him as pure evil. The city of Los Angeles was in panic until Ramirez was finally caught in 1985. A group of citizens recognized him and held him until police arrived. He was sentenced to death but died of cancer in prison in 2013. His story remains one of the scariest examples of random, cruel violence. 7. The Zodiac Killer. The Zodiac Killer remains one of America's greatest mysteries. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, he murdered at least 5 people in Northern California, though he claimed to have killed many more. What made Zodiac infamous was not just the killings, but the taunting letters he sent to newspapers. These letters contained strange symbols, ciphers, and threats. Some were solved, but others remain unsolved to this day. He seemed to enjoy playing a game with the police and the public, showing that he wanted fame as much as fear. Despite massive investigations, Zodiac was never caught. Over the years, many suspects have been named, but no proof was strong enough to close the case. His identity remains unknown, keeping the mystery alive for decades. The Zodiac Killer is remembered not only for his crimes, but for how he turned murder into a chilling puzzle for the world. 8. Ed Gein. Ed Gein, often called the Butcher of Plainfield, inspired some of the most famous horror movies, including Psycho and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Born in 1906 inches, Wisconsin, Gein lived a lonely and disturbed life under the control of his strict mother. After her death, his mental health worsened. In 1957, police investigating a missing woman discovered something shocking at Gein's farmhouse. Inside, they found human remains turned into household objects, lampshades made of skin, bowls made from skulls, and clothing stitched from body parts. Gein admitted to killing 2 women but confessed to digging up graves to collect body parts for his disturbing creations. Though technically not a serial killer by numbers, his crimes were so horrifying that his name became legendary in true crime. He spent the rest of his life in a mental institution until his death in 1984. Ed Gein's story shows how reality can sometimes be more terrifying than fiction. Each of these 8 names carries a dark story. Some, like Bundy and Dahmer, were caught and punished. Others, like the Zodiac and Jack the Ripper, remain mysteries. Together, they remind us that evil can hide behind charm, masks, or even ordinary faces.